My upgrade is finally complete.
This is Justified Tech, with tech reviews, tutorials, and more. Please like, comment, subscribe.
Hi guys, this is Devin of Tech Justified. So 20 or so grueling hours of overtime. Hi guys, this is Devin of Tech Justified. So 20 or so grueling hours of overtime combined with my current college budget, I was finally able to afford the almighty Ryzen system to replace the old Kavari A1077K system with the fairly named bulldozer architecture, as is about as fast as a bulldozer, that I consider my firstborn. I mean, my old rig was fine and all for office productivity, anyway, which is what I built it for. But this is probably going to be the only time for the next 4 years I'll have the funds to obtain a new system, and it was just not going to cut it. And besides, it's the one time I won't go to jail for partially dismantling my firstborn and selling it off to the highest bidder. So I have just finished preparing the results from a few benchmarks to visualize how much of an upgrade AMD's Ryzen is from their quad-core APU from 2014. Let's see, it's not really a quad-core as it's a 2-core, 4-thread CPU. It's cringy. I'm still a little salty about it. That's not actually quad-core. I was so naive back then when I built it. Anyways, so on the firstborn, I had the 2-core, 4-thread, quad-core A1077K with 8 gigs of Kingston DDR3, 1866 megahertz HyperX RAM, with my GTX 780 on a Gigabyte 878 micro ATX motherboard on the FM2 Plus socket. It is cooled with the Hyper 212 Evo, and it is contained in the Rosewood Challenger case. It's not a bad case, not that great for cable management though, and there is no side panel. So there's the aesthetics. And here's a picture right here of it. You know, it's just kind of a slightly older system. I built it in 2015. The Kavari APU came out in 14. And as for my Ryzen machine, I have a Ryzen 5 1600 with 16 gigabytes of G-Skill Ripjaws 5, DDR4 RAM clocked at 2933 megahertz. It is also sporting my GTX 780 and is cooled by the Corsair H100i. I'm using the Gigabyte X370 gaming motherboard. It's a stripped down version of the X370 chipset as it is not compatible with SLI, but I got the case free for it, so that's why I purchased it. I was going to buy a B350 regardless. Anyways, it is contained in my deep cool Duke Case WHV2, which I will probably provide, a building review in a later video. So with specs out of the way, let's go straight into benchmarks. First, we have the very popular Cinebench benchmarks, and wow. So to begin with, we have the Kavari chip, which clocks in at a mere 287 CB, while the 4 GHz overclock scored 322 points on Cinebench. And then the Ryzen rig rose to the occasion at a comparatively insane 1,134 points at the stock frequency. It also achieved a 1,264 point score at 3.8 gigahertz, which I've gotten rock solid stable on my system. It ran Prime 95 and Furmark for 2.5 hours straight. And as for the 4 gigahertz overclock, I got 1,322 points on Cinebench. And I would like to note that the further benchmarks exclude 4 gigahertz as I had some stability issues with my memory that didn't completely have to do with the CPU overclock, and also I was experiencing an exponential increase after about 3.8, 3.9 gigahertz of my voltage to just get the system to boot. And I will explain the memory issues on a future video. And as for my second test, we'll move on to handbrake rendering, and once again, it wasn't even a competition. After rendering the same MKV file at a low quality into MP4 on both systems, the Ryzen machine ripped apart the Kavari rig by completing the render in 100 seconds at stock compared to Kavari's 266 seconds at stock and 4-second improvement with its 4.0 GHz overclock. My settings for the handbrake files were wiped out before I could render the file with the overclock, so all overclock results were emitted for Ryzen. But still, completing the task in less than half the time is freaking fantastic. And finally, as for the third and final overclocked, we have Grand Theft Auto 5 Pass 2. Pass 2 was chosen because it had most consistent results across multiple tests. The test was run at 1080p with very high settings across the board. Being a relatively CPU-intensive game, frame rates across the board benefited from the more powerful Ryzen system, with no less than a 22% increase in minimum, average, and maximum frame rates, even compared to Kavari's overclocked numbers. Interestingly, the Ryzen machine benefited greatly with its 600 MHz overclock, while the Kavari machine showed little to no difference with its own 600 MHz overclock. With the Ryzen machine's overclock, it gained another 19 plus percent increase over its own stock frame rates across the board. And in conclusion, the Ryzen machine just kicked Kavari's ass. It was a no-brainer. Wasn't even a competition, which it is logical because you are comparing a 2-core, 4-thread CPU with a processor with higher instructions per clock and also triple the cores and the threads on an overall better architecture. So overall, this was definitely a worthwhile upgrade, and with a few caveats, as it is a new architecture, there are still bugs to work out, and I kind of went against the AM4 compatibility list for the memory, so I did have some issues there, especially the XMP profile. But once again, I will go over that in another video. And anyways, that'll be it for the video today. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want more Ryzen updates. And this is Tech Justified. I will see you next week.